Hello crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com. Today I'm here with the Love from Lizi December 2017 card kit. I wound up making 10 cards, but I don't know that I made my most ideal projects, but I just saw on the Facebook group that a lot of people were really anxious to see some ideas with the cards, so I kind of went ahead and made some quicker cards to finish up and to give you some inspiration. So to get started, I wanted to create the shaker card using the netting, and I had talked about this in my unboxing video, so if you want to see what was in the kit, you could certainly check that out, but it is sold out now, so this is more inspiration for people who own the kit. And I wanted it to look like the shaker card was covered in netting, but I knew that if I just put the netting, the sequins would stick and it wouldn't shake around as much. So first I glued down or adhered down the netting, and then I put a piece of acetate over the netting, basically between the netting and where the shaker will go. It's not really noticeable. In fact, it kind of looks like it's just the netting there, but it just makes it a little bit easier in terms of it's just, it just works better. So I had put that on a piece of red pattern paper from the kit, and I'd cut out an oval. I'm trying to decide what sort of background I want for it. And I believe that I settle on the red background just because I want the sequins to be a bit more of the star of the show. To create my shaker, I do the same thing I always do. I double up my foam tape and create a rectangle of foam behind it. In order to make sure that it's sealed up well, I cut pieces of foam tape that are a little bit longer than I need, and then I butt it up against one side and trim the other side so that it's exactly where it needs to be, and this creates a nice seal. Here I tried to put some embossing powder bag. Like, it's supposed to make your embossing powder not stick where you don't want it to, and I thought that it might reduce some of the static for the sequins. However, I actually found these sequins started sticking more since I used the bag than in other cards where I didn't, so I might not do that again in the future. It could have just been a particularly staticky piece of acetate though. I've peeled back the tape, and then I'm going to place it over the sequins on my shaker. I like to put the sequins down first in my shaker card or my shaker panel over it. I find that works a lot better. It took me a while to figure out that that was the best method, but now that I have it, I'm quite happy. And as you can see, I was pretty generous with the amount of sequins that I add. Even though the sequins included in the kit are technically a sampler pack, I find that they're quite a bit, and you can really make a lot of cards with them. Next up, I wanted to use the silver foily, well, it's a silver doily. It's not technically foiled, but it kind of has that shine that a foil does. Anyway, I wanted to use some of the silver doilies and some of the specialty cardstock, because that is one of the things that's really cool about Lizi's kits is she has these specialty cardstocks. So to adhere down the doilies, there are the holes in them, so if you just use your regular tape adhesive, then the adhesive would come through the holes, and that's not really what I want to do. So I'm going to use an adhesive dot roller, and this adhesive dot roller just happens to be one from scrapbook.com. They make their own line of adhesives, and it just allows anywhere where there's a hole, the adhesive just goes right on through because it lays down in a dot pattern as opposed to a solid piece of adhesive, and it works well for adhering things that aren't solid, essentially. Now, even though looks like I'm placing 3 doilies on this card, it's actually only 1 doily strategically placed to be spread throughout the card. And I wanted to show you that process and take the time to show you me cutting it up off of each bit, just so that you can see that you can create the look of using a lot of materials but yet only using a few materials. So I just adhere down one piece, trim it off the back, and then use the scraps to kind of complete my design, and that way I'm able to kind of stretch my supplies a bit. Although of course the Love from Lizi kits are quite full, so it's not like you really need to stretch your supplies. You're going to get way more than 10 cards with each of her kits. I mean, the cardstock I think folds into 10 cards, but everyone can supplement with some additional cardstock. Sorry about that. So I also stamped the sentiment from the stamp set, and I clear embossed over it. I stamped it in black VersaFine ink, which is a pigment ink and is therefore sticky, and it gives a look of black embossing even though I used clear powder. Once I had that down, even though I really liked the look of the fancy cardstock with the doilies, I didn't feel like it was quite complete. So I looked into the kit and I tried to find some unique aspects of the kit. I tried to use as many different things in the kit as possible. So I thought about some ribbon, some pearls, and ultimately decided to go with one of the teeny tiny already tied up bows that are included. I personally like the fact that the bows are already tied up. It makes it a lot easier for me since I'm not very good at tying bows. And then I'm able to just take a small glue dot, stick it behind the little bow in the center, and know that it will hold really well. I find that zots, glue dots, whatever, those like little glue, I mean, they're just glue circles, tend to stick really well for elements like that. I wound up using a lot of vellum this time, and I had seen a comment, someone saying like they felt like the vellum and the stickers were a little large, but I found that a lot of the vellum could be trimmed down to be card size, although there were a few stickers that were quite large, and I'm not sure I would use them on cards. I would have to find something else to use them on. And there are a few pieces of the vellum that are a little larger. You can tell that they're kind of more designed for scrapbookers, but if you're creative, you can make it work. So here on this card, since I just really wanted to use that sticker, I kind of kept it simple. I layered a piece of vellum with a sticker and a pattern paper, and just kind of by matching them up, since the sticker had some florals in it, I decided to pick the floral pattern paper that was quite busy, and the vellum was able to sort of tone it down. Now I have that red oval that that I got from my shaker card. So when I made my shaker card, I cut an oval out of the center. And I wanted to use that piece because, you know, I'd already done the trouble of cutting it, and so then I kind of get the extra bonus card from it. I also die cut a bunch of the rose dies from the kit. So there's a rose die in the kit, and I just cut a whole bunch of it. And I'm going to position them such that it looks like this whole piece was covered in rose die cuts and then cut out. But of course, I'm going to do my trick where I am able to trim it off and create the look of a lot of die cuts, even though I'm not using as many. So I'm only going to cut out 4 roses, but it's going to look like a lot more than that by strategically placing them all over the oval panel. And I believe the oval that I used is a solid oval from Cat Scrappiness, but it doesn't, particularly matter what oval die cut you use. She just has some great basics at great prices if you're in the US. So again, I took that really large extra and I was able to fill in a big space, but even then, it looks like I had a 5th one that I die cut because I've just added a whole one there. So I guess I used, 5 to die cut it, but just cutting out a few and getting the look of a little bit more, I think was helpful. So I'm again going to try to fit that in. I guess my scraps were probably a little bit smaller than I had hoped they would originally be, or just weren't quite the right position. But I was able to create the look of it being a full and complete piece, and I was quite happy with the way that it turned out. And you can see I'm even filling up teeny tiny spaces. I think filling up even the smallest spaces is really key to making it look like it was a fully covered sheet as opposed to something sort of pieced together. So next up, I want to start layering this into a card. I obviously want that to be the centerpiece, so I'm going to put that piece of vellum behind it. That piece of netting behind it. But I wanted to show it to you on the gray card because once I put it on top of this dot pattern paper, you can't really see it in the video. However, I think in real life it adds a really nice subtle touch, and so I would recommend that, and I kind of wish I'd done it in other cards throughout this 10 cards 1 kit video where I would use the netting as a layer because it just adds this really pretty subtle effect. And then I'm going to take a sentiment, and again I took a piece of scrap red pattern paper that I used when I made the first card, and I have stamped a sentiment from the stamp set that comes in the kit, and I laid it over just the oval piece and then trimmed it up on the edges. You could have, of course, laid that down and run it through with the die cut, but since my technique was to sort of stretch the die cuts, I added it second. And then I'm going to put it on a red card base. I use some of the cardstock in the kit as card bases and some of it as builder elements and layers in a card. So for whatever reason, as I went through the 10 cards, 1 kit, I was just really using a lot of the stickers. I don't know, I guess they just kind of called to me this month. There was a lot of other things about the kit that I didn't use and felt like I should have used more, so I'm sorry about that if you were hoping to kind of see some inspiration. Like, I don't think I wound up using the Chameleon pen, the Nuvo drops, or the embossing powder at all. And I even used the stamp set less than I expected I would. And I think it was in part because, like I said, I saw a lot of people kind of asking to see some inspiration. And so I think I just started kind of hurrying a bit more. And that's why I went for like the easy thing of using the stickers. But I still hope that it provides some good inspiration. And then check out the other designers who probably made better use of some of the elements of the kit that I didn't use. And that's what's nice about having a whole design team. You really get to see a bunch of different people's perspectives on the same kit. And I recommend you join the Love from Lizi Facebook group if you haven't already. Like, if you get the kits, you should be in the Facebook group, just because a lot of people share their ideas for the kits. They just, share pictures of cards they made, and that way you can get as many ideas as possible. So here I'm working with another piece of vellum from the kit, and I'm going to create a smaller card. I'm just going to create a square card. It's going to be 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. So like an A2 size card, but just trimmed down to a square. So I went through, picked a pattern paper that I thought matched up well. And to add some adhesive behind the vellum, I wanted to create some areas that were covered with stickers, because if the sticker's on top of it and then you put the adhesive behind the sticker, the adhesive won't show. But you could, of course, run vellum through a Xyron sticker maker, and then it would cover it with an all-over bit of adhesive. I've also found that because this vellum is patterned and it has those silver elements in it, you can usually hide the adhesive in the pattern parts or behind the silver pieces. The silver pieces particularly are opaque, so it's a great place to hide the adhesive, but the pattern kind of obscures the adhesive that shows through. So for this next card, this is my attempt at something a bit more masculine with this kit. I don't know that it quite achieved a masculine look, but I guess it's more gender neutral anyway. I wanted to use that wood pattern paper because I felt like of the pattern papers, there's a lot of really pretty feminine stuff, and there were a few sheets that were less feminine, but still that sort of shabby chic look. So I wanted to give it a shot. So I paired it with the red because I wanted to use the letter stickers to add a sentiment. And it was just a random piece of red that I had left. I also chose to use one of the light peach peel-offs. I know that the peachy color, again, I guess kind of leans a little more feminine because it's like a peachy pink sort of thing, but there is peach in the pattern paper that I'm using, so I wanted to kind of pull that out and add some interest. And by keeping them simple lines as opposed to like pretty die-cut shapes, I felt like it was maybe a touch more masculine. And I'm going to wind up doing something later to this card. So first here, all I'm doing is adding the word thanks and spelling it out. As you can see, my method is to start on one side and work my way across. I find that to be more effective. However, a strategy that you can use to apply letter stickers that I had forgot about when I was working on this kit is to put them all on the edge of a ruler, so that way you could be sure of the spacing and sure of where they fit, and you can kind of like, if they're all sticking on the edge of a ruler, you can move them around with the ruler and move the ruler around and to see if you like the way that they're looking. And then when you like the way they look, you can press it all down. So that might have been a better strategy to use. However, this worked for me. By placing down a few letters, I realized the things would fit. And I put it on a cream card base to pull out the colors from the pattern paper. And I thought it was done, but you'll see I go back to it later in the video. And I probably should have split the video and kind of clipped it back into there. But I did kind of want to show you like the process of it too, and what's kind of nice about going through and making a bunch of cards with a kit at one time. You kind of can, as you play with the materials over a couple of hours, you kind of start seeing things that you didn't necessarily think of at first. I really wanted to use these wood veneer frames. I thought they were fun, but when I tried to layer them on a card, by putting 2 of them down, it got really thick, so I decided to cut them. And I was able to cut them with my Tonic Tim Holtz scissors, and it cut through pretty easily. You probably could cut it with a smaller scissor, but the Tim Holtz scissors are meant for cutting through thicker materials, and so it did not cause the wood to crack or give me any problems. Once I laid it down though, and I had picked a pattern paper that was relatively simple, but when I tried to place the sticker on top of it, I just felt like the sticker, which had the sentiment on it, had gotten kind of lost. So I decided to add a piece of the silver glimmer paper behind the frame. This was a little bit tricky to do, but nothing too bad. I just basically traced around the frame and then tried to cut it a bit smaller. At first I was being too cautious and didn't quite cut it small enough, and so I kind of went back and just kept trimming it down a teeny tiny bit till it fit within the frame. And I'm going to adhere it to the frame with my ATG adhesive, which is what I use for most things. It's pretty sticky. I use the 1/4 inch, which is relatively thin, but here I still had a bit of trouble because the wooden frames are even thinner than a 1/4 inch. But I was able to put the adhesive down and then kind of roll it up. So you can put the adhesive, and then if it's sticking out where you don't want it, you can kind of just like push it over. It doesn't start tearing your paper right away as long as you're working at the beginning. So here, the same thing. You can kind of see it better there. Sorry, I got off camera the first time, but I'm like tucking the adhesive underneath, like off the sides where it's hanging off. I'm tucking it down onto the frame, and then I'm ready to adhere the frame right to the card. And since it's the ATG, I know that it's going to be super strong. So there's 2 other things in this kit that I didn't make use of, and that was the flowers and the holly berries. I had a hard time with them because I couldn't imagine making a card that thick. Both of them are pretty thick, and so what I think I would do with them later on, I wasn't able to do it for this video, but there are those 2 little calendars, and so you could make something really gorgeous, a 3-dimensional element with the calendar pieces using some of those berries, or using them, for other crafts besides cards. It just didn't work for cards for me. So here's where I came back to that thanks card. I thought it really kind of needed something else before, and I actually thought by adding these elements of the wheels and that are made of metal, it kind of added to the masculineness of it by putting something that was, again, a little bit more traditionally masculine. For whatever reason, metal embellishments seem to be considered that. I thought that it worked out, and it allowed me to show you an idea for another part of the kit, so I'm going to put those down with some strong glue dots or zots. Next up, I'm working with another piece of vellum and another sticker. Like I said, I kind of just got stuck on the stickers, I guess. But they just made for such easy sentiments. However, there are sentiments in the kit that you could replace a lot of these with if you didn't particularly like the sticker sentiments. Here I wanted to play with the idea of the ribbon because what I'm doing, the technique that I'm doing, is not particularly revolutionary because I'm really just putting ribbon across in a strip. However, I'm putting it across the card such that it tucks under the element and you can see it through the vellum. So I thought that added a bit of interest to it. However, when I put my adhesive down, I was not straight at all, like not even close. I had a big wonky line. So I had to do a lot of fussing to tuck that adhesive under the ribbon. Another thing you could do is to put your adhesive onto your ribbon instead of onto your paper, and that would help you position a little bit more. But essentially, that ribbon winds up framing the sentiment on the inside because where it sticks through the vellum, it's on top and bottom of the sentiment. And I think it just adds a little bit of interest to the card. It's just a little bit of a different way of thinking about them. Or about, using ribbon. And then I'm actually going to layer some ribbon on top of it. I'm going to use these silver leaf ribbon. And I'm going to adhere that down, but just over the bottom for a touch of sparkle and added interest. And in a sense, a little bit more dimension as well. And I'll just put some adhesive behind some of the leaves and tuck them under. And that will be pretty much it for that card. I don't think I show you all the fussing that I had to do with those leaves, just because I'm trying to keep the video a little bit shorter, but I did cut off some of the leaves to make it easier to tuck behind. And like I said, just added adhesive to some of the leaves. So I think we're getting towards the end. We only have a few more cards left. This piece of vellum stood out to me, and so did the sticker, as just both being pretty. So I did the simple thing and combined them. You know, the sticker had a really pretty rose. I liked the mix of the wheel. It kind of called for like put something in the center because it had that circle element. So I trimmed it up to be just under the size of a card. Even though I think it was originally like a 4x6 element, I was just able to evenly trim it on all sides to make it work for a card. And then I was able to add adhesive behind it, and because it is such a busy piece of vellum, it has all those roses. That meant that I was able to hide the adhesive really easily, and it kind of looks like pattern paper, but you do see the yellow color around the wheel. If you wanted it to be a bit more interesting and bold, I might suggest using like the green cardstock instead, and it might make it a little bit more obvious that you could see the card base through the vellum. I also wanted to use a few more of the peel-offs, and so I just added them as stripes along the bottom. I just felt like it grounded the card, added a bit of interest, and I laid it down. Then I'm just going to trim it off the sides. The smarter thing to do would have been to decide to use the peel-offs before I adhered the vellum down, but it wasn't that big of a deal to just sort of lift the vellum up a bit, trim those off, and then restick everything, because I hadn't waited too long in between. If you wait too long, it might be harder to pick up your adhesive. So at this point, I thought I had 10 cards, and I start kind of flipping through and counting them, and then realizing there's only 9, so I need to make you one more. But at this point, I do want to mention that there is a coordinating blog post on my blog where you can see each of the cards individually. Like, you can just see a still picture of each of the cards and just get a better idea of how it was made if you kind of want to take your time with any of them. So for my final card, I just wanted to use some elements of the kit that I really enjoyed. I wanted to use that bit of silver glitter just because it really was high quality silver glitter. It was a tag originally, but I just couldn't see making it work as a tag. It just didn't call to me in that way. So instead, I decided to cut it into a banner shape. And at first I couldn't decide if I wanted it to have a banner on one end or the other, but you can kind of see I'm just sort of like fussing with it. Other things that I really liked about the kit was that specialty white shimmer paper and the silver shimmer cardstock, as well as the doily and the rose die cut. So I die cut the rose out of the shimmer silver paper to incorporate it, and I just liked that there was a few elements of the kit that were just like really classic looking because of their shimmer and the silver color. So I wanted to combine a few of those elements. So combine the elegance of the fine glitter paper with the shimmer white paper with the doily, and so that's kind of the inspiration behind the card. And again, just went with one of the stickers because I was having fun using them, and I also liked the idea of a pop of red coming off all of this silver white color. However, there was a border around that sticker. It was like a kind of like a holly berry border, and that didn't really work with my card, so I just fussy cut off the border so that it still had that interesting shape to it, but it was just a pop of red and there was no extra pattern. Once I decided where I wanted my roses to be, I covered up the overlap with the glitter banner, and then since I wanted to incorporate the shimmer and silver doily, I decided to kind of do the same technique I did at the beginning of the video, and in many ways these cards are pretty similar, so I'm sorry if it kind of feels like I reused an idea, but it's just you know, that's what I was drawn to in the kit, so it's what I wound up using. And like I said, I was trying to finish up using the kit. I've had an influx of supplies lately that I've been trying to work with and give each thing its own time, but I feel like I'm always behind in terms of sharing things that I want to share. So I just put a little bit of the silver doily in each corner. I think I only used one doily and still got a little bit in each corner, which makes sense because it's not even a quarter of the doily. But it was able to kind of extend it and make it a bit more interesting. And so those are my 10 cards for the Love from Lizi December card kit. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in more crafting tutorials, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I like to share 6x6 paper pad tutorials, 10 cards, 1 kit tutorials, and then just various other tutorials that kind of come to mind as I make some fun cards. I will link to Love from Lizi in the video description below, to the Love from Lizi channel. And then if you're watching this on the Love from Lizi channel, you can also get the link to my channel. Subscribe to both channels, though, for more inspiration. And I will link to the blog post in the video description below. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and I hope you enjoyed. Bye.